Ayurvedic hospital close to our place. Then itself, they had started CPR, that is cardiorespiratory resuscitation, and he was brought with the CPR, active CPR. His doctor and security were with him, and we continued CPR and did emergency intubation, that is putting a tube in the respiratory system, trachea, and continued CPR along with other resuscitative measures. Initially, there was no pulse or BP recordable, even palpation-wise. So after doing intubation with the continued CPR, we shifted the patient to our ICU with all the staff and the facilities. In ICU, after some time, we could get some rhythm. On the monitor, it showed ST elevation in the ECG leads, in the anterior leads, plus we could see regional wall motion abnormalities, that is reduced movement of one artery territory, that is LAD territory. There was hypokinesia. This means there is less movement in that area. So after stabilizing him with some IV fluid and all, we just give him an injection, that is injection reticulace, for dissolving the clot if it is there in the coronary arteries. And we could see him with a significant edema of the right lower limb, right leg. When whatever information we got from the doctor was he was a diabetic, hypertensive, chronic kidney disease patient. He had right lower limb DVT, for which he was put on IVC filter. And recently he had a thin subdural hematoma. Last Saturday when it was done, that was almost very thin. And the neurosurgeon was the doctor who was with us in the ICU and who followed the patient from, accompanied the patient from Sritariyam. So after discussing with him, we went ahead with the thrombolysis with the injection reticulace. Even we continued CPR, that is from 8 o'clock in Sritariyam till 9:52 in our ICU. With all other ACLS criteria, we continued CPR. In spite of our very sincere, very continued CPR and other measures, we couldn't make him survive. So we are very sorry to inform that he is no more with us, and our very sincere condolence and prayers for his family and for the Kenyan people. That's what happened. Mr. Raila Amlo, 80 years old, former Kenyan Prime Minister, was brought to our emergency medicine today morning at 8:20 a.m. with the history of sudden collapse during his morning walk at Sritariyam, which is an Ayurvedic hospital close to our place. Then itself, they had started CPR, that is cardiorespiratory resuscitation, and he was brought with the CPR, active CPR. His doctor and security were with him, and we continued CPR and did emergency intubation, that is putting a tube in the respiratory system, trachea, and continued CPR along with other resuscitative measures. Initially, there was no pulse or BP recordable, even palpation-wise. So after doing intubation with the continued CPR, we shifted the patient to our ICU with all the staff and the facilities. In ICU, after some time, we could get some rhythm. On the monitor, it showed ST elevation in the ECG leads, in the anterior leads, plus we could see regional wall motion abnormalities, that is reduced movement of one artery territory, that is LAD territory. There was hypokinesia. This means there is less movement in that area. So after stabilizing him with some IV fluid and all, we just give him an injection, that is injection reticulace, for dissolving the clot if it is there in the coronary arteries.
Start with a 50% deposit bonus. Increase your investing power with Pocket Broker. 100 plus investing assets, instant top up and withdrawal with no fees.
It was a handshake that took Kenya by surprise. Straight out of the blue sky and seemingly away from the company of their respective close aides, President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga shook hands on the steps of Harambee House, the block housing the office of the president in downtown Nairobi. The handshake came against the backdrop of a mounting national crisis occasioned by the bitterly disputed 2017 presidential elections that included a rerun boycotted by Raila Odinga in October 2017. The handshake was a turning point for the heated political climate. It was a moment of statesmanship for both President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, who had at the time styled himself as the people's president, complete with a contentious mock swearing-in ceremony at Uhuru Park. The handshake before a shocked crowd of media cameras suddenly ended a political crisis that was on the verge of dividing the country, even physically. To a stunned audience of their divided supporters, President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga explained the objectives of their handshake. Objectives included a 9-point joint agenda.
Kenya cannot succeed without all of us. It needs all of us. And this is, to me, the spirit of the handshake. It is not about two people. It is about bringing a country back on track. It is about bringing the people of a nation to feel once again that they are part and parcel of the whole. It is to remove the issue of people feeling marginalized, isolated, left out, and to encourage a feeling that existed in this country once upon a time when some of us were children, but we hear those stories.
Tulikuwa tuambia watu wetu tunaenda Canaan.
Heroes Jaramogi Ajuma Oginga Odinga. The older Oginga was an independence firebrand that, together with Jomo Kenyatta and other leaders, fought the cause of ending colonial rule and negotiated the constitutional order of Kenya at the famous Lancaster conferences in London. And to a politically conscious father was Raila Odinga born. And as a child growing up, he watched his father rise up to become the country's first vice president when Kenya was declared a republic in 1963. Raila Odinga's own political consciousness set in the mid-1970s when it became apparent that the country was on a general relapse, complete with the rise of official political intolerance. Events that included political assassinations and intimidation, arrest and detention of government critics quietly stoked the reformist flames inside Raila Odinga, and by the end of the 1970s and the beginning of the 1980s, he joined the list of those targeted as critics of the repressive state. A coup attempt by elements of the Kenya Air Force on the 1st of August 1982 marked a turning point for Raila Odinga as he was detained and tortured, having been falsely accused of a role in the coup attempt. For 6 years, Raila Odinga was detained without trial and held in solitary confinement. He was released in February 1988 only to be rearrested in September the same year for allegedly engaging in political activities. Raila Odinga's second stint in detention lasted close to a year, ending on the 12th of June 1989. His subsequent freedom did not last long. For the third time, Raila Odinga was arrested again on the 5th of July 1990 for being part of a group of brave human rights and political reforms crusaders that had dared question the repressive political climate under the single-party rule. His third stint in detention lasted exactly 1 year and 10 days. Raila Odinga was released from his last stint in jail on the 21st of June 1991. In October 1991, fearing assassination and against a backdrop of violent state repression, Raila Odinga fled the country to begin life in exile. He sneaked into Uganda disguised as a priest and proceeded to exile in Norway. Life in exile was not to be too long. Back home, the struggle he had been part of was bearing fruit faster than some anticipated. In December 1991, the notorious Section 2A of the Constitution was repealed and Kenya reverted to the multi-party system it abandoned in the 1960s.
Pendekezo langu ni kwamba badala ya sisi, kwa sababu ninawahurumia mama, nawahurumia wazee, nawahurumia vijana wa university, wa secondary school, wa primary schools, wako na mimi, na sitaki hata mmoja auawe au aumie. Tufungue section hiyo, na nauliza nyinyi nyote kukaa na mimi, tuende barabara yetu tukiwa KANU pamoja. Lakini visiwe vyama vya ukabila. Kama naandikisha na kama ni ya ukabila, it will not be registered.
Odinga returned from exile in February 1992 to begin life in elective politics, winning and retaining the seat of Member of Parliament for Langata constituency for more than 2 decades. In 2002, that is 10 years after the resumption of multi-party politics, Raila Odinga cemented his place as a consequential political force when in a year of dizzying political events, he emerged the architect of the transition that saw the Party of Independence KANU roundly defeated in the country's first ever free and fair democratic elections. Having unsuccessfully run for president for the first time in 1997, Raila Odinga embarked on a series of breathtaking experiments that included joining KANU and seizing the strategic, all-powerful position of Secretary General.
Napendekeza kwamba Mheshimiwa Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi achaguliwe kama mwenyekiti wa chama cha KANU.
But the dalliance with KANU came to a thrilling end when Raila Odinga disagreed with President Daniel Arap Moi's 2002 succession script. Moi had dramatically leapfrogged a youthful Uhuru Kenyatta over the large cast of seasoned hands that now included Raila Odinga. The fallout for Moi was particularly costly as Raila Odinga walked out with a huge chunk of KANU leadership that included then Vice President George Saitoti. Opposition unity was Raila Odinga's new mission, a mission he pursued with selfless zeal. As illustrated by his Kibaki and Nak won resoundingly, and Raila Odinga sat in cabinet as Roads and Infrastructure Minister. Having been elected on the promise of reforms and a new constitution, NAC embarked on the process, albeit with increasing reluctance among conservatives in government that felt reforms were no longer necessary after the removal of Moi and KANU from power. But Raila Odinga pressed on. And the Bomas of Kenya process of reviewing the constitution finally began. With conservatives shifting the game to the content of the proposed constitution, Raila Odinga formally drew the line and successfully opposed what he termed a mutilated version of the constitution NAC had promised Kenyans. In 2005, Raila Odinga resoundingly won the no vote against the proposed constitution. Against the back of that victory, the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM, a party styled from the symbol of the no vote, was born, and retaining the voting patterns of the 2005 referendum, and with Raila Odinga's presidential candidate, ODM was a sure bet of its supporters in the 2007 election. With a crushing parliamentary majority achieved within hours of counting, the presidential coronation of Raila Odinga appeared only an absurd miracle away, and indeed absurdities followed in the disputed tallying, missing election officials and a nightfall swearing-in ceremony staged against the rising smoke of unprecedented political violence in parts of the country. It was on the steps of Harambee House in 2008 that the first handshake, with the help of the international community, set out to implement the terms agreed to in the National Accord, and this included a new constitution promulgated in 2010.
The seal has been affixed and it is presented to His Excellency the President.
With the new constitution in place, Raila Odinga ended his long parliamentary stint in 2013 to concentrate on his quest for office of the president, with the polls projecting a statistical dead heat. The contest between Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta ended in the Supreme Court, where judges upheld the disputed figures and Uhuru Kenyatta's victory. The Supreme Court battle between Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta resumed in the aftermath of the disputed 2017 election results. Raila Odinga had gone to court claiming the election results neither added up nor reflected the decision of voters. This time, the Supreme Court agreed with Raila Odinga. Then, seemingly from nowhere, Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta shook hands on the steps of Harambee House. The handshake not only ended the crisis but also began a phase of an unprecedented political partnership, a rekindling of old family ties, a reawakening of the original bond of their fathers, and the collective seizing of the moment to, just like their fathers, reshape the destiny of Kenyan politics. From a political detainee to the statesman, many profess today, Raila Amolo Odinga has walked a long journey, all the while dutifully carrying what his biography aptly titled The Flame of Freedom, now fondly known as Baba.
Naam, bila shaka ni siku nzito ambayo tumekuwa tukifuatilia kuanzia asubuhi, wakati ambapo taarifa hizo zilipotoka India kuhusiana na kifo cha aliyekuwa waziri mkuu Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga.
Na mtazamaji, tarehe 15 mwezi Oktoba mwaka 2025, leo ni siku